Welcome to Csec Biology, the cover page. In today's lesson, we're going to be looking at the CXC Csec June 2019 HSB multiple choice paper, or one might say paper 1. Might I remind us that you are expected to go through these questions using your textbook, and also we suggest that you go through the comments when they are posted and or the description to see if there is anything added that you should know. If you have not yet liked, share or subscribe, please ensure that you do so now. Also, we ask that when you do subscribe that you hit that notification bell and select all, so of course you'll be informed as soon as there is a new publication. Let's hop right into the multiple choice paper. Question number 1. Plants obtain nitrates, and we selected D, by absorbing nitrate through their roots. Of course, nitrate is going to go through the root, definitely not through the leaf as would have been carbon dioxide or oxygen. So nitrate there going through the root of a plant, and that's going to be D for question number 1. For question number 2, which of the following is an example of a terrestrial food chain? Terrestrial food chain, that's a food chain on land, and that's going to be plants, grasshoppers, and birds. Of course, we're not going to be finding grasshopper in the water, which is an aquatic environment, so our answer for question number 2 is going to be C. Alright, 3. In which of the following structure does photosynthesis occur? That's straight from your topic cells in your textbook. It's going to be the chloroplast, so our answer there is C. Question number 4, item refers to the following diagram, which shows a red blood cell before and after being placed in a concentrated salt solution for 1 hour. The blood cell being placed in salt solution, it's going to be losing water. So here our answer, the question is, the change in the blood cell shown in 2 occurs because water leaves the cell by osmosis. If it's water moving, it's going to be osmosis, and you've seen there that the cell has been shrunken, so it means that the water left the cell by osmosis. So our answer here for 4 is going to be B. And we move on up to question number 5. Question number 5 shows a food chain for aquatic environment, and we're looking at the phytoplankton, zooplankton, fish, and of course water bird. The question is, the producer in this food chain is the producer is usually at the start of the food chain. It's usually a plant, and here we have a phytoplankton. The phytoplankton is of course can we say microscopic plant. However, in large number you'd see the green color there in the water. So our answer here is going to be D for question number 5. We move on down to question number 6, which of course is, to which of the following food groups do oats belong? Oats, of course, is a staple. Many persons would be looking for cereal, but oats, of course, are stable. It's not a fruit, it's not a legume, it's not vegetable. So your choice here is going to be staples, B for number 6. We move on over to question number 7. Question number 7, which of the following statement is true about pepsin? Pepsin is, of course, an enzyme that acts on protein. Now this is a wonderful question, and you're going to be looking at B and C, and I'm going to tell you why we're going to be looking at B and C, because pepsin will of course break down protein into chains of polypeptides. Then it's going to break it down into long chains of course peptones, and then finally amino acid. So to ask what happens to pepsin, yes, it's going to break down the protein to polypeptides, but the final stage we're going to bring it right down to amino acid. So we chose amino acid instead of polypeptides, because polypeptides would have come before amino acid, but of course the body uses protein in the form of amino acid. So our answer here for 7 is going to be B. Move on down to question number 8. Which of the following vitamin can be produced by the skin as well as obtained from food. Now, this is a question that has repeated on several past papers, and of course the answer here for 8 is going to be D. I think you can see this question, I think, on the 2015 and 2020 paper. You could just check them out. Same for question number 4. We move on now to question number 9. Wonderful question, and it too is a repeated question. Item 9 refers to the following pie chart, which shows the proportion of food group in a balanced diet or balanced meal. And here we have, remember in biology usually we don't shade, so we have some streaks here, might be a learning moment, streaks, cross hatch, some stipple, and of course this area is left blank. So carbohydrate there with the streak, fruits and vegetable with the cross hatch, protein with stipple, and of course fat was left blank. Now what we're supposed to do, a person diagnosed with diabetes mellitus should of course decrease carbohydrate intake. Carbohydrate intake, you want to ensure that you are taking in less of those complex starch, complex sugar, so that you can of course get that condition under control. Question number 10. Which of the following teeth aid in grinding food into smaller pieces? Now the operative word there is grinding, and of course B is going to be our answer for question number 10, molar and premolar. We look at question number 11, which is a repeat question on many people. Kwashiorkor is a deficiency disease caused by a lack of protein, and that's always going to be true. Kwashiorkor is a deficiency disease caused by the lack of protein, so our answer here for 11 is B. Never confuse it with marasmus, which is associated with carbohydrate. Question number 12. Which of the following represents the correct sequence of event in the formation of a dental cavity? A dental cavity, we're talking here about tooth decay. I chose D for question number 12. It means that we're going to be having some plaque buildup, then we're going to be having the enamel, that white area, being decayed or eroded, then we're going to be having the dentine being decayed just the same. After which we're going to be having, if it gets really bad, abscess 1. So our answer for 12 is going to be D. And we move on down to question number 13. Nicely, question 13 is going to be that of the digestive tract. It refers to the following diagram, which show a part of the human digestive tract. And here we have labeled A to be the gallbladder, B to be the duodenum, C to be the stomach, and D to be the pancreas. Question 13. Which organ is responsible for the digestion of protein only? It's very important that we look at the word only. If we didn't say only here, we'd be looking at B and C. But being that it is only, your answer for 13 is going to be C. Question number 14. Process of egestion is defined as the removal of egestion. Egestion is always going to be undigested food, and this is a repeated question, pretty much like question number 13. Undigested food, here we are thinking about feces, and of course it has not gone through the process of metabolism, so egestion is always going to be undigested food, removal of undigested food. So 14 is going to be D for the answer. Question number 15 refers to the following table, which shows a function of some structures of the respiratory system. And we're looking at the structure 1 here, filter warm here, and moisture, and that looked to me like it's a nostril, and 2 prevents food from entering the trachea, suggests there the epiglottis, and then we have 3 provides air passage to the lungs, that could be the trachea or the bronchus or the bronchiole, and of course 4 produce sound with the voice box, and of course the vocal cord is called a larynx. Our answer for 15 is going to be C, nasal passage, epiglottis, bronchus, and larynx. So there we have it for question number 15. C is the answer. We move on down to question number 16. Which of the following reagent is used to test for glucose? Now, glucose, of course, a type of starch or type of carbohydrate, but to test for glucose, we are using the Benedict solution. So, of course, our answer here is going to be D for 16. Move on down to 17. To deliver mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, the following steps should be taken, and this is a repeated question in many other past papers we have looked at for human and social biology. The correct order in which these steps should be taken is, of course, D for question number 17. You're going to place the victim or the casualty on the back. Then 1, you are going to push the head backward with the hand, and of course push the jaw up with the other. Then you are going to pinch the nose to seal the mouth with the mouth, and of course you could just look at it at your leisure, but the answer here is always going to be D for question number 17. Question number 18, which of the following is not a characteristic of gaseous exchange surface? Gaseous exchange surface, they are usually moist, they usually have thin walls, and they have a rich supply, of course, of blood vessels. They are well supplied with gases. Now, which is not? Now, they usually have large surface area, so here we have small surface area. So remember, the operative word here is not. So C is our answer. And we move on down to question number 19. Be that C is the answer for question number 18. So question number 19 reads, which of the following substances found in cigarette smoke is addictive? This is a repeated question on many papers, and it's going to be nicotine. A star is going to be causing the cilia cells to stick together, those air that is flicking there. Carbon dioxide, of course, it is a product of respiration or combustion, and of course forms a pretty nasty gas there as a greenhouse gas. Carbon monoxide will be readily affixed to the hemoglobin, preventing oxygen from being taken up. So our answer here is going to be B for 19. It's always going to be nicotine. Now we move on to question number 20, which refers to the following diagram of a cell. And we're looking at a lobe nucleus here, looking like a F that's turned back way, and pretty much a loop here, what we refer here as a pseudopodia. So this is pretty much the phagocyte. It's a type of white blood cell called a phagocyte or granulocyte. The question is asking, the diagram most likely represents the phagocyte. It's going to be any day of the week. So our answer here for 20 is going to be B. And we move on down now to 21. Interesting question it is, and of course it refers to the following incomplete table which show blood vessels and the organs they supply. Now the first vessel we're looking at here, the first organ is going to be the lungs, and the lungs is usually supplied by the pulmonary artery, and then we have the hepatic artery, and once you see the hepatic artery, we're talking about the liver. Then we come on down to the intestine, which is of course going to be the mesenteric artery, and of course renal clinic, renal patient is always has to do with the kidney. So our answer here for 21 is going to be C, any day of the week. And we move on now down to 22. Which of the following best describe the function of a pacemaker in the heart? The pacemaker pretty much regulates. It has a regulatory effect, so it regulates the beat of the heart. And usually persons are using a pacemaker if they had a heart attack or if the heart is having some problem. This electronic device would be implanted. That's an artificial pacemaker. However, there's always a pacemaker in the heart somewhere above the right atrium there. So the pacemaker is usually a regular part of the heart, but there can also be what is called an artificial pacemaker should there be some challenges with the heart. So our answer for question 22 is going to be C. 23, high blood pressure most likely leads to a cardiac problem. A cardiac has to do with the heart, cardiac muscle, the heart, the muscle that just never get tired. So 23 is going to be A. 24, blood pressure is highest in the arteries. Now a person might be a little confused about the arteriole, but remember that arterioles are going to be breaking down further into capillaries, and of course the capillaries will meet venule, and then venule will meet veins. Important to note here is that the arterioles are going to have muscles that are associated with them, so that when we have the face being flush or the blood vessels flowing close to the skin, it is as a result of these muscle and the arteriole. So the artery usually have blood under high pressure as it has no valve, and it's pretty much moving the blood around very quickly so as to ensure that you stay nourished and of course remove the waste as quickly as possible, supplying of course these organs with oxygen rich blood. When we move on to question number 25, we've just completed 24 and the answer there is going to be B. Question number 25, which of the following diagram represent the pelvic girdle? And the pelvic girdle is going to be represented by B. Our answer here is B, and it's going to be textbook. If you were supposed to follow the skeletal system in your textbook, you would have observed that this is pretty much a part of the text. The function of a bone marrow in long bone is to, of course, make red blood cell, or to make red blood cell. This is pretty easy, and this is going to be textbook. It's question 26. The answer here is going to be D, and of course, that seems to be any day of the week. So we move on over to this question number 27. Muscle groups that oppose each other to produce movement is described as, and here this is very nice, it's pretty much like up and down like a piston is working. We refer to this as an antagonistic muscle, so our answer here is going to be C for question 27. We're moving on down to question 28 and 29, which refers to pretty much this simple diagram of a kidney tubule. A is of course the afferent arteriole and E the efferent. The important thing to note here, might I just change the color and point this out for you very quickly. The important thing to note here is of course going to be the size of these blood vessels. So if you were supposed to look at this blood vessel here, it is much smaller than the blood vessel on this side, and that's pretty much what gave us the idea or told us which of a blood vessel it was. A is going to be the afferent, and of course the smaller blood vessel is going to be the efferent, and then we have B as a Bowman capsule and C proximal convoluted tubule. Let us look at what the question is asking us for. In answering item 28 to 29, each labeled part may be used once, more than once, or not at all. B, which labeled part collect filtrate from the glomerulus? And that is going to be B, which is our Bowman capsule. B there, which is our Bowman capsule for 28. For 29, which labeled part bring blood to the glomerulus? Is very important. In some cases you would have seen an arrow, but based on the size of the blood vessel, we're able to say which blood vessel is responsible for taking blood to the glomerulus, and of course this is going to be the afferent. A is going to be, so for 29 your answer is going to be A. All right, I did label as A for afferent and E for efferent. All right, 30. Which of the following joints allow movement in all direction? That's a 360 plane. All right, so pretty much like a circle. This is a question that's repeated on many papers. Your answer here is going to be D for question number 30, and that's for any day of the week. Let's move on down to 31. 31, the part of the skin which act as the insulating layer holding heat in the body is the subcutaneous fat. And this is textbook. This is going to be any day of the week. You could just check your textbook. Subcutaneous fat, not the sebaceous gland. All right, let's move on down to 32. So 32, we have our answer here to be which of the following is an involuntary action? That's our question. The answer is going to be breathing. Involuntary action are those action in which you have no conscious thought or control over the beating of the heart. Breathing, example, those are example of course involuntary action. So for 32 our answer is going to be C. For 33, which of the following action occurs to bring about accommodation in the eye? Interestingly, you could look at all the options, but for the interest of time, we're looking pretty much at the answers. So here it's going to be tightening of the suspensory ligament through relaxation of the ciliary muscle. And this is, of course, when we are viewing distant object. So, of course, remember, your answer here for 33 is always going to be A. We move on to question 34. We're doing nicely so far. Remember, at any time you can pause the video and, of course, replay. You are listening to Csec Biology, the cover page. I am Mr. Wilson, and if you have not yet, please be reminded to like, share, and of course subscribe. When you subscribe, please be reminded to hit that notification bell so that you will be informed whenever there is a new publication. The 34, that's the question we're looking at now. Which of the following hormone is responsible for causing the liver to convert excess sugar to glycogen? That is going to be the insulin, and then of course the glucagon is going to convert that glycogen back to glucose. So our answer here for 34 is going to be A. 35. Which of the following statement is not true about the endocrine and nervous system? All right, this is going to be a wonderful one, and this is a question that has been repeated a number of times. Our answer for 35 is going to be D. They both have the same response time for transmitting and receiving information. The operative word here is going to be not. All right, so pay attention to that. In your exam, you want to ensure that you underline these words that really makes a difference. Of course, when you see them, once you would have gone over the question and look back, you'd say, wow, this is what is expected. So for 35, it's going to be D. For 36, which of the following hormones play a major role in the growth of human? All right, Thyroxine it's going to be, and that's textbook, so it's going to be C for 36. And we move on down to 37. 37 refers to the following diagram, which represents a front view of a male reproductive system. And of course, this is another diagram or question that is repeated a couple of times. Here we have the sperm duct for 1. For 2, we have the urethra, of course, and then we have the prostate gland, and then lastly for the seminal vesicle. All right, that's very important for you to know the difference here between the ureter and the urethra. All right, good. Ureter is the one that usually comes first, and that's the one coming from the bladder. All right, so let us move on with this. Our answer for 37 is of course C. Sperm duct for number 1. 2, urethra, that's the one going through the penis, and of course prostate gland for 3, and then we have the seminal vesicle. So of course 37 is C. Which of the following is the correct sequence of activities that occur when a person pick up a plate? Now this is a repeated question, and of course there can be two interpretations. There can be an interpretation of a B and an interpretation of a D, but we went with D, and I'll give you the explanation for D, but I'm not going to be giving you the explanation for B. But if you so think that your answer is different, or you want to challenge what I have said here, please leave that challenge in respectfully in the comment section. Of course, we will revisit. So here we're saying touch receptor in the skin and eyes keep the brain informed to coordinate the action. All right, so we are picking up the plate. So you touch the plate, you are picking up the plate. Then 2 receptors detect the plate. Having touched the plate, the receptors detect the plate, and the impulse is sent to the brain to make the decision. Now the brain, having made the decision, will send the impulses down the white matter of the brain through the spinal cord to the arm. And then finally, the effector, which are usually muscles or gland, in this case, they are muscles, bicep, tricep, those muscles. The effector contract and relaxes antagonistic movement to pick up the plate. So our answer for 38 is going to be D. For 39, this is another very interesting question in which we are of the opinion that it has no answer. 39, we think it has no answer. If you were supposed to go with B, that's fertilization. I don't know about this. This, asexual. Mitosis here makes it asexual. If it were meiosis, if this were meiosis, this area here, if this were meiosis, then of course your answer would have been D. So we're thinking for sexual reproduction, here we probably had an error. This here should have been meiosis and not mitosis. So we still circle D, but we think that there's no true answer for 39. If you think you have something different, respectfully leave it in the comment and we can have a discussion around it. So for 39, we think that there's no answer, as mitosis there is going to, of course, give you the diploid number of chromosome, and with sexual reproduction, usually what's passed on is, of course, the haploid, which is half the number of chromosome, 20 half from mommy and half from daddy, and of course you get the F1 generation. So we are of the opinion that there's no true answer for 39, but we said the best option there would have been D, and if you were supposed to circle B, that would have been fertilization and not sexual reproduction. 40. Which of the following method of contraception function by preventing sperm from entering the uterus? This is going to be very easy. Barrier. You're preventing something, you're going to use the barrier, not the natural, not the surgical. The surgical is usually, depending on which of the surgical. This is another tricky one. This is another tricky one because you're talking about surgical. If the male had a surgery, would we have sperm coming? This is another tricky question. But of course, this is another tricky question. When you look at this, of course, the person who wrote it probably was just thinking about women, but what about men? But our answer is going to be barrier. And you can think about barrier as a femidom or the condom. So our answer here for 40, of course, is going to be A. However, C is something that is arguable as an answer, as it were, for males. All right, 41. Ovulation is a process by which ovulation, a mature egg is released into the oviduct, and that is always going to be the definition there for ovulation. So our answer there for 41 is going to be D. We move on down to 42, which refers to the following diagram, which shows a process occurring in human. And I felt that this is a wonderful process. If you're seeing the diploid number of chromosome, it's always going to be mitosis. Remember, I explained that earlier. It's a full number of chromosome that is passed on from parent to offspring. We said the diploid number of chromosome. So the process illustrated above is going to be mitosis, and your answer for 42 is going to be A. And we move on down to 43. Chromosomes are made up of protein and DNA. So your answer here is going to be A, and this is a question that is repeated a whole lot on the paper, so you probably want to look at this question well. I want to say ding 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 for 44, and I'm saying ding 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 for 44 because I think in our 2020 or 2015 publication we had an error with this question. We're never ever afraid to say that there's an error, and we did put out the correction in the comments and in the description right after, a day after thereabout, that we had published that video. Now when I had answered the question, my line of thought was around the idea that I wasn't looking at continuous and discontinuous variation. I was more looking at eye color, as to say that is genetics, and I was looking at tongue. I think I got caught by the concept that tongue rolling can be learned. All right, so you're going to see a lot of things saying that tongue rolling is discontinuous variation, and I answered the question with that line of argument in my head. But now I'm going to tell you why that line of argument is incorrect. Yes, tongue rolling can be learned, but when you would have learned about tongue rolling, then it becomes yes or no, as I like to say about discontinuous variation. It becomes yes or no. Now you are able to roll your tongue or not roll your tongue. But this is what we should have used to answer the question. Continuous variation, it is usually affected by environment. Continuous variation is usually affected by environment, and with continuous variation there is a midpoint. So you might have 1, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, 2, 2.5, that type of thing. Or you might have persons with different complexion. This person is dark, a little lighter, that type of thing. And the same is true for eye color. So I revisited the question using the knowledge of variation, because I too thought that there was some error here. And of course we revisited the question. I did do some processing, and I'm able to say now that 44, we're sure that the answer is going to be B, as tongue rolling. Once you would have learned to roll your tongue, it is yes or no. So it's genetics. Height, you have different height, and that is going to be continuous variation. So of course it is affected by environmental factors. Tongue rolling, of course we wouldn't say that, because with discontinuous variation, it's not usually affected by environmental condition. If you think you have something different, respectfully tell us in the comment, so of course we can revisit the question. But we strongly think that question 44, the answer is of course B. We move on down to question 45. Item 45 refers to the following genetic cross, which shows the inheritance of blood group in human. Of course, allele A and B, they are usually co-dominant to each other and are dominant to O. O is of course the recessive allele here. Alright, so the question wants us now to which of the following offspring inherited the homozygous recessive. So homozygous are here meaning the same, and the recessive is the O. So I make my cross here. It is nicely labeled already. Parental phenotype, the gamete, fertilization taking place in this area, and of course the F1 generation. So we want to know when we cross here, come on down to N, and we cross here, being that these are the recessive and they are homozygous, we're going to be getting 2 O's here, so it makes N the answer for this question. Let's move on down to N. 45, the answer for 45 is going to be N. 46, SEMA has the following signs and symptoms: constriction of her bronchial tubes, coughing and wheezing. She is most likely suffering from asthma. This is a repeated question, so you want to pay much attention to it. Repeated a couple of times well too. So of course 46, which is A, you probably want to look at it very closely. Now we move on to 47. Hypertension does not occur as a result of anemia. Alright, hypertension will of course occur because of obesity, and if you have high cholesterol level, that could of course lead to high blood pressure or hypertension, and the same thing for arteriosclerosis. Those are things that are going to contribute to high blood pressure. So our answer here is going to be anemia for 47. For 48 to 49, it refers to the following terms, and these are terms that most times students really never ever get to. They are really pretty much at the back of the syllabus. And we're looking at antibiotic and of course antibody. Alright, so which term refers to protein produced by blood plasma cell derived from B lymphocyte? That's going to be A, your antibody. 49, substance released by the body to neutralize harmful chemical produced by microorganism. That's going to be antitoxin, and it's going to be C for 49. And we move on down to 50. Which of the following disease causes severe diarrhea and abdominal pain? It's going to be typhoid, and this is a question that is repeated a number of times. So your answer here for 50 is going to be A. We move on down to 51. 51 refers to the following diagram, which shows the stages in the life cycle of the mosquito. And there we have 1, the mosquito, 2, the egg, 3, larva, and 4, the pupa. Which of the following stages are formed in or on water? That is going to be the egg, the larva, and the pupa. So for 51, it's going to be D. 52. What type of immunity is acquired from the antibodies that are produced when vaccine is administered? So the antibodies are produced by you when the vaccine is course administer? The answer here is going to be A. It is going to be artificial but active, since you are producing it. All right, so you got the antibody but you are producing it, so it's artificial active. And these we are going to be looking at them as we go through. So our answer here for 52, it's going to be A. And we move on down to 53. Beriberi. Oh, nutritional deficiency is an example of a disease that is classified as a nutrition deficiency. All right, just like rickets, night blindness, all those. So 53 is going to be D. 54. Which of the following gases is produced in landfill site? Methane. And I'm telling you, D is the answer for 54. As a result of this gas being produced, it's what, CH4. As a result of this gas being produced, usually high temperature of a day would of course cause the landfill to catch fire. As such, landfills are now really sophisticated areas with vent pipes and air to collect leachate and all that, so as to prevent fire. Compaction and all of that continue to take place, and it is managed so as to prevent that buildup of methane to cause a fire on the landfill. So our answer at 54 is going to be D. And we're going to be moving on down to 55. What is the effect of carbon monoxide on the human body? A. It is 55. It prevents oxygen uptake by the body, as the carbon monoxide readily affixes itself to hemoglobin more quickly than, of course, oxygen can do. It pretty much reminds me of an invasive species and how they operate. So our answer here for 55 is going to be A. For 56, chlorine bleach can be added to drinking water to destroy microorganisms. Of course, you can familiarize yourself with the many other options that I have not looked at. I have looked directly at the answers here, as I would have gone through the others in the interest of time. So you can read through and of course see where you need to of course look at other things. Most of the others you'll be able from your studies to say that they are just not possible. 57. Which of the following substance contribute to the excess growth of algae in waterways? It's always going to be nitrate and phosphate. Nitrate and phosphate. So B is your answer for 57. We move on down to 58. Which of the following are effects of releasing untreated sewage into rivers and lakes? It's going to be all the above. D is your answer for 58. You're going to have an increase in bacteria. As a result of this increase in microorganism working on this organic matter, you are going to have a decrease in oxygen because they are using up the oxygen. They are going to cause an increase in carbon dioxide in the water, increase in the acidity of the water, and then eventually it is going to lead to a fish kill, as a suspended particle from the feces is going to clog the fish gill, and of course there won't be enough oxygen for the fish, and of course, like I said, it's going to lead to eventual fish kill. You can go over and see our videos on ecology. We have covered this in detail. So it's D for 58. For 59, which of the following is an example of non-biodegradable pollutant? This is also covered in our Ecology Live. The answer here is going to be lead. Paper is biodegradable, cotton, and of course sewage, though a pollutant, is also biodegradable. And all these material, if they are not properly managed, they are all pollutant. But of course lead is non-biodegradable, so A is your answer for 59. For 60, contamination of water sources is detrimental to human because of the spread of waterborne disease, and one waterborne disease we have here is going to be cholera. B is your answer for 60. That takes us to the end of this multiple choice paper for Human and Social Biology 2019. If you have not yet if you found this helpful, please like it. Remember to share it. And of course, please subscribe. And when you subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you can be informed when there is a new publication. Thanks much for watching. Please remember to visit the channel to find other useful video. You have been listening to Csec Biology, the cover page, and I am Mr. Wilson.